Welcome once again to a review of The Evolving Analyst, and I have with me today Vanessa Moore, one of the authors in the book. And the title of her article is Transforming Corporate Culture. It's in the digital transformation section. Now, Vanessa is a business development specialist as well as a director of her own consulting company. And what I like the most about Vanessa's article is how she examines the BA and the role that the BA plays. And I think that role is very pivotal in shaping and sustaining organizational culture. So thank you very much for being on the show, Vanessa.
Thank you, Marcus. That's a really great summary, honestly.
Oh, it is? Oh, thank you. All right, cool. We got a few questions for you. We'll start off with one. When did you sort of realize this transformation problem that you talk about in the article? When did you realize that this transformation problem was really about culture and not really about compliance?
I think part of it is just engaging your BA skills. The more conversations you have, the more you're able to uncover what we talked about previously was that invisible hierarchy, right? So you have the upfront facing problem, which is the trigger and the reason to change. In this case, it was compliance issues around standard operating procedures and other pertinent documents that field site workers rely on. And you get that kind of understanding of, okay, so there's a loss of revenue, there are fines that are being issued, there's a larger impact to safety, and yes, we need to solve this problem. At the same time, they were implementing what's called the operations management systems framework, or the OMS framework, which was heavily based on the regulatory compliance that this specific client was being subject to. So it was a lot of going through that. I think it was like about a 250-page book that kept being updated every 2 weeks. So that was part of the things that I've taken on. Because ultimately the system needed to align not just to the OMS framework, which was the governing principle around how you were to maintain these documents, but also ensure
Mm.
compliance with the regulators and auditors, because once you have a framework in place, you do have to show that you're following it, which does meet the compliance standards. So understanding those multiple layers, again, that was more surface. Okay, we have a problem. This is what it looks like. This is what the hierarchy is and the patterns around it. But what does your current state look like?
Mm.
So one of the things that we understood was that the current state was never mapped out. So that took an extra bit of effort. We didn't have a current state on the project plan. We didn't have the time or the budget for it. Going through multiple conversations and understanding kind of like your second or third connection to your stakeholder and talking to those individuals, you can get a high level current state of what's happening. Now, I know that the previous article that I mentioned, we chatted about how BAs are moving into process architects, and it's really just mapping process maps. And I do want to identify that when a BA comes in with a process map, they identify the inputs, the outputs, the key players, and the the analysis happens when we see where the problems are taking place. So things like gaps, and we look for synergies. So that is the emphasis on the process map, and that's why we needed the current state. In that, we were understood that there was one document manager who was responsible for all of the enterprise. So, of course, this person was quite bogged down. So, not only was she responsible for the multiple sites and managing site documentation specific to sites, all of those documents were treated at a corporate level, even though they didn't need to be defined at a corporate level. So, understanding that that was the burden that she was shouldering, she had another document manager who was underneath her, but that wasn't necessarily that person's role. So it was a burden onto somebody else to kind of help manage this very mature enterprise,
Mm.
honestly. One of the things that we ended up chatting about was that wouldn't it be great if we just empowered other people to kind of steward their own documents, especially in the safety realm and all of this stuff. We kind of dispersed those roles of responsibilities. We understood that the existing document manager was there for the corporate level oversight. And then not only did we take off the burden of having her create the documents and manually initiating emails to be like, this is the version that you need to look at.
Mm.
created that workflow, and then we were able to empower other people from other divisions of the business
mm,
to create their own documents, review them, and then when they were ready for that corporate governance, that's when it would go to her. So
mm,
really just I want to say I keep saying empowering, but I think that is the proper word. I think people were very happy to be in charge of their own work, because many of them um, were quite disappointed with the wait times for this one
mm,
individual. I think one of them had mentioned that they were waiting 6 months for a document to go through the whole
mm,
workflow, which, lack of a workflow was a manual process. And if you looked at that one person and extrapolated across the business, then and the amount of documents that were there, I think like when we did the whole migration into the system, we were looking at well over 10,000 documents. And I think that's a very conservative number because we had to concatenate the revisions as well, like the previous versions of the documents. So that's where it became noticeable that it was a larger issue. It was a corporate and culture issue. And until we were able to establish those additional roles, it didn't matter what system we were bringing in. It could have been a fully autonomous system, but an autonomous system could break, right? Without somebody stewarding it, without somebody providing the proper oversight to ensure that compliance is being followed and regulated. Um, it just wouldn't have succeeded. So I think that's a long way of saying that that is the importance on the relationship when it comes to people, process, and technology. Many people focus on the technology when it should take into account the people and the processes in place. And what are you trying to alleviate in terms of pain, right? How are you setting your client up for success?
awesome. Now, I know you were using the word empowering quite a bit. And how do you think that empowering more people really changes ownership or accountability? Or how did empowering more people change ownership or accountability?
I think really they were excited because less wait times, right?
Mm,
When the company is facing fines or being penalized on the regulatory standpoint, it's easy to look for the person in the group and say, well, you're the problem because these things weren't done on time. And then being the sole document manager, she could say, well, I was waiting on this person. So this really puts in a proper audit trail. This really lets people understand this is where my document is throughout the whole process. I understand where it's waiting. I can go and actually initiate this myself and not wait on that one person to do it who was heavily overburdened. And then for the ones that not were not only site specific documents, which could just stay within the site and didn't need that corporate governance, for the ones that did need the corporate governance, we did have a quick little once over to the document manager before she sent it to the final approver. Now, what we did was ensure that all of the approvers reflected the ownership of the document. So if it was a health and safety document, it would be approved by the health and safety director. If it needed a higher corporate level of governance, like from approval from the CEO, then that's where it would go to that specific document manager and she would kick off that specific workflow up there. But I think like what we saw and proof is in the pudding. People were excited because they were getting the results that they wanted to see. Things were being approved within 2 weeks, within 3 weeks. I know that the sites felt very comfortable as well because they knew that the documents they were getting were reliable, they were trustworthy, they were written according to compliance standards to ensure that they could perform their job safely and that they could, with confidence go home to their family. And I think like by restoring that confidence and the trust in the process itself and rejigging that process, it really helped people come together and almost form more of that community. So I think like overall, it's just when you try to take away responsibility from an individual, I think like depending on what that looks like, it can be a difficult chat. You're kind of
mm,
offloading work, but at the same time, it backlogs another channel. And then
mm,
then that person gets frustrated. Like I could do this myself, or why don't I do this for myself? And the good thing about us going in when we did is because we were able to kind of circumvent any sort of desire or need or any sort of behavior around not conforming to one, the new system, or two, the existing system, which would have led to, I think, a nightmare of other issues, right? Because you would break off into multiple silos, and then your current state would just grow. So yeah, I think when you choose to empower people, you align it with them. You share what the role looks like, you talk about the benefits of it. Yeah, certainly there's some downfalls of it, but if it's a department specific document, I think they're very happy to be the ones to
Mhm.
be in charge of it. One of the things that we also allowed was a delegation of authority and delegation of process as well. So we ensured that a document within a workflow was not waiting on a single person. Somebody
Mm.
could defer and then the backup would take on. Or if we saw that backlog of documents pile up again, they would initiate the delegation too.
Oh, awesome. It sounds quite comprehensive, but it looks like things got ironed out the way that they
Mhm.
should, and that that ownership and that accountability got accounted for as well. Um,
Yeah.
what do you think in the case of leaders? What do you think the biggest misconception leaders have about digital transformation?
Oh, technology is going to fix my problems. Like I think that's the I'm gonna leverage my BA knowledge here and just say, why make it complex, right? That's what it is. Like technology is gonna solve all my problems. Like we see this with
Mm,
AI, right? We're gonna implement AI and it's going to make things more productive. We're gonna be quicker in how we perform. One of the things recently that I read about AI, which was very intriguing, was that when you implement AI, even for your internal team, and you say this will help you increase productivity, the corporations are actually not aligning what it is that you should be increasing productivity on. So people are in silos using it in their own
mm,
means, saying that it's increasing their productivity through X, Y, and Z. But if it doesn't align to a corporate goal or some sort of internal team initiative,
yes, yeah.
it's really hard to measure those metrics. So I think the same can be said here with technology is going to solve all of my problems, right? That
Mm,
client was like, we want a fully autonomous system. Nobody is supporting it, but at the end of the day, it is an ECM, enterprise content management system, and people need to be the ones that are writing the document. They write it, they collaborate on it, they review it, they approve it, they publish it, and there has to be some oversight around that.
mm,
So I think fully autonomous systems are something that should be looked at. Fully integrated is probably one that's it should be easier to accomplish and track, but at the same time, it's just technology is not here to solve all your problems, right? Businesses cannot run just on technology. They need people, they need processes, they need guidance, even systems that are implemented, right? They're subject to a governance architecture and process, one would hope, in order to ensure the longevity and the ROI that you see from it. So, I think really nothing else out of this book, a lot of people should take into account one, the value of a business analyst and what they bring to the table. And I think we don't focus enough on the core functionality, which is problem solving. You're able to identify gaps. You're able to identify opportunities to streamline processes. You're able to, like I said, solve problems. And then a big thing is like you're able to roll your sleeves up, get a little
mm.
dirty. You're able to figure things out. And I think that's just the mark of a great business analyst. And many roles actually don't have that. So I think that's something for businesses from that technology lens should consider, right? When you have a project implementation be a great, here's some handoff, here's some training materials. How is it going to be sustainable within the organization? Who do you have that's going to support it? What BAs do you have internally that can ensure that it can scale as required or be available for updates and work with your internal IT resources. So I think there's a number of patterns and touch points there that people should consider. But I think where businesses fail is just this is going to solve our problems. A equals B. That's it.
No, you're right. And sometimes you see implementing AI has cost you so much revenue. Sorry, not revenue. It's cost you so much money to implement, and maybe your revenue is the same type of thing, right? So it's
Mhm.
like, look, how much money I spent on implementing AI is giving me the same results. This thing's not working, and you're back to square one again. So
Yeah.
it certainly does happen. Yeah. Well, thanks very much, Vanessa. What I really like about the article too, and what we've discussed today, is that you really help to show how analysts create value by fostering, I think this is a very important, by fostering shared understanding. It's all about encouraging ownership, and you're at the same time you're trying to translate strategy into behaviors that people can realistically adopt. And I think that making culture an active part of delivery that you've talked about, rather than an afterthought, I think that's vitally important. So thanks once
Oh,
again,
yeah.
Vanessa.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Marcus. It's always a pleasure. Please reach out whenever you'd like to.
Will do. Awesome. Well, on that note, have yourself a great day.
You too. Take care.
Okay.